Scientists put a live snake in her hands. She smiled. They walked her through one of the most famous haunted houses in America. Actors trained to terrify, darkness engineered to disorient, sounds designed to trigger the deepest human panic response. She laughed. She tried to touch the actors' masks. She asked if she could go again. They sat her down and showed her footage that had been clinically selected for its ability to produce maximum fear and disgust in healthy adults. Films so disturbing that test subjects routinely had to leave the room. She watched calmly. Occasionally, she said the images were interesting. For 15 years, a team of researchers at the University of Iowa tried every method science and psychology had ever developed to make this woman afraid. Nothing worked. Not because she was brave, not because she was trained, not because she had chosen to overcome fear through discipline or experience, but because the part of her brain that creates fear had been completely and permanently destroyed. And what they found when they studied her, and what happened the one time fear finally did break through, reveals something about the human mind that should change the way you think about every emotion you have ever felt. She is known in scientific literature only as SM. Her real name has never been published. Her face has never been shown. She has been one of the most studied individuals in the history of neuroscience for over 2 decades, and almost nobody outside of academic research knows she exists. SM has a condition called Urbach-Wiethe disease. It is so rare that fewer than 400 cases have ever been recorded in all of human history. In her case, the disease did something specific and devastating. It calcified her amygdala, both of them completely, symmetrically, hardening the tissue until the structure was non-functional. The amygdala is the brain's alarm system. It is the structure that detects threats, fires the fear response, and tells every other part of your brain and body that something dangerous is happening. It is why you flinch at a loud noise. It is why your heart rate spikes when someone startles you. It is why certain images, sounds, and situations produce a physical response in your body before your conscious mind has even processed what it is seeing. SM has no functioning amygdala. She has never had one as an adult. And so, she has never felt fear, not once. The researchers who studied her were not just curious. They understood immediately that SM represented something extraordinary, a living case study in what the human mind looks like when one specific structure is removed. Justin Feinstein, the neuropsychologist who led much of her research at the University of Iowa, described her as the most important living patient in the history of fear research. He and his team spent years documenting everything. They took her to a pet store and steered her toward the reptile section. SM immediately walked to the snake enclosure and reached in. The store employee stopped her. She had to be told it was dangerous. She genuinely had not registered it as a threat. They filmed her at a haunted house. She did not just fail to be scared, she became curious and playful. She approached the actors who were attempting to terrify her. She tried to examine their costumes. At one point, she startled one of the performers, who had been trained to scare people, by getting too close to examine his mask. She thought this was funny. They showed her film clips from The Shining, Silence of the Lambs, The Blair Witch Project, clips that made other subjects physically uncomfortable. SM described them as interesting. Her physiological response, heart rate, skin conductance, breathing, remained completely flat throughout. Feinstein noted that SM showed no anticipatory fear either. Normal humans begin experiencing fear before the threatening event occurs. The moment you walk into a haunted house, before anything has happened, your amygdala is already firing. SM's body did not prepare for threat. It simply experienced whatever arrived with no warning system attached to it. But the absence of fear was not straightforwardly good. This is where SM's case becomes something more complicated than a story about a fearless woman. Because fear is not just an emotion, it is a survival mechanism, and without it, SM had spent her life walking into situations that should have ended it. She had been held at knife point, she had been held at gunpoint, she had been physically attacked on multiple occasions. In each case, she had not panicked, had not fled, had not done the things that fear would have driven a normal person to do. She survived these events, not because she handled them well, but because she was lucky. Feinstein and his team documented that SM regularly placed herself in dangerous situations without any awareness that they were dangerous. She approached strangers in circumstances where most people's fear response would have driven them away. She did not understand intuitively why certain places felt threatening to other people. She could reason about danger. She knew intellectually that certain things could hurt her, but she could not feel the warning, the signal that arrives before the conscious thought, the signal that makes you cross the street before you have decided to cross the street. That signal did not exist for her. She described her life as feeling like everyone else was seeing something she could not see. And then one day in 2013, fear finally broke through. Feinstein had been running an experiment. He asked SM and 2 other patients with similar amygdala damage to inhale air enriched with carbon dioxide, a method that produces a sudden and intense sensation of suffocation and panic in healthy subjects. He expected nothing. The amygdala was supposed to be the structure responsible for fear. These patients had no amygdala. The theory predicted they would feel nothing unusual. What happened instead stopped the entire research team. SM panicked. For the first time in her documented life, the first time in what may have been her entire adult life, she experienced fear. She described it as sudden, overwhelming, and completely unfamiliar. She did not know what was happening to her. The sensation was so foreign that she had no framework for it. The same response occurred in the other 2 patients. This single result broke something open in fear research, because if the amygdala is the fear center, and SM has no amygdala, then what had just produced fear? Feinstein's conclusion was that there are 2 separate fear systems in the human brain. The first is the amygdala system. It responds to external threats, things outside the body, the snake, the haunted house, the threatening stranger. This is the system SM was missing. The second is a deeper, more primitive system, likely connected to the brainstem, that responds to threats from inside the body, suffocation, internal physiological crisis. This system does not root through the amygdala. It is older, more fundamental, and it cannot be destroyed by Urbach-Wiethe disease. SM had lived her entire life with only the second system intact. She could not feel threatened by the world around her, but her body could still panic when it believed it was dying from within. And here's the part almost nobody talks about. SM knows what fear is now. She experienced it once, in a laboratory, inhaling carbon dioxide, surrounded by researchers who had spent years trying unsuccessfully to frighten her. She described it afterward as one of the most disturbing experiences of her life. Not the sensation itself, but the realization that everyone around her had been living with that sensation attached to the world, to strangers, to darkness, to uncertainty, to the future. For their entire lives. She said she finally understood why people behave the way they do. She had always known intellectually that humans feel fear. She had observed it in others. She had studied her own condition, but she had not understood it the way you understand something when you have felt it. One breath of carbon dioxide gave her a window into the emotional experience of every other human being on the planet, and what she saw through that window disturbed her more than anything a haunted house, a snake, or a horror film ever had. Your amygdala fired today, probably several times, at something small, something that will not matter tomorrow. A sound, a notification, a conversation that went slightly wrong, and each time it fired, it shaped what you did next, who you approached and who you avoided, what you said and what you held back, which risks you took and which ones felt too large. You did not choose any of those responses. They arrived before you could choose. SM spent her entire life without that signal, without the constant invisible pressure that your amygdala applies to every decision you make from the moment you wake up to the moment you fall asleep. And the one moment she finally felt it, she looked at the world and understood something she had never been able to understand before. You are braver than you think, because you feel the fear and you live anyway.